My sister disappeared after a family secret was exposed. I wish I had stayed silent. I found my sister's wedding ring in my mailbox yesterday. No note. No return address. Just the simple gold band she'd worn every day for the past 26 years, sitting in a padded envelope like a final goodbye. Rebecca was never married. That's what I'd always believed. What she'd told everyone. What our entire family had accepted as truth. But that ring tells a different story. And now that I know the truth, now that I understand what I destroyed 3 months ago when I opened my mouth, I can't breathe through the guilt. My name is Jasmine Henry. I'm 48 years old. I work as a nurse in Toronto. And I'm the reason my 52-year-old sister disappeared without a trace. But this isn't a simple story about a family argument. This isn't about embarrassment or hurt feelings. This is about a secret so devastating that my sister spent 26 years living a lie to protect me from it. About a sacrifice so profound that when I carelessly exposed it, she had no choice but to vanish. This is the story of how I discovered that everything I thought I knew about my childhood, my family, and my sister's love for me was built on a foundation of the most heartbreaking deception. This is the story of how my sister gave up everything, her marriage, her happiness, her entire identity, to keep me safe. And how I repaid that sacrifice by destroying her life in front of 32 people at a family dinner. This is the story of how truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just reveals that the cage you thought you were in was actually the only thing keeping you alive. Let me take you back to the beginning. To 3 months ago when I found a marriage certificate hidden in my sister's basement. To the moment I learned that my perfect childhood was purchased with my sister's future. To the worst discovery I ever made. Before I tell you what happened, I need to stop and look at something that's breaking my heart. Right now, 77% of you are watching this story, watching a woman confess how she destroyed the person who loved her most, and you're going to leave without subscribing. Without commenting. Without acknowledging that you witnessed this. Is that who we are? People who watch someone bleed out their deepest regret but can't even hit a button to say I see you, I hear you, you're not alone? If you've ever been protected by someone's sacrifice, if you've ever been loved so much that someone gave up their own happiness for yours, if you've ever made a mistake that cost you the most important relationship in your life, then subscribe right now. Comment where you're watching from. Let me know I'm not the only one carrying guilt so heavy it crushes me every single day. Because what I'm about to tell you is so painful, so devastating, that I need to know someone out there understands. That someone out there won't judge me too harshly for what I did. Hit that subscribe button. Please. Because this story only gets more heartbreaking from here. Rebecca raised me. That's the simple truth that defined my entire childhood. I'm 48. She's 52. Only 4 years between us, but it might as well have been 20 for how much she mothered me. Our parents died in a car accident when I was 4 years old. 1980, winter storm on the 401. Dad lost control of the car. Neither of them made it to the hospital. Rebecca was 8. We had no other family. No grandparents still alive. No aunts or uncles who could take us. We should have gone into foster care, been split up, lost each other to the system. But Rebecca wouldn't let that happen. I don't remember much from those early years, just fragments. Rebecca's face hovering over mine, telling me everything would be okay. Her small hand holding mine as social workers asked us questions. Her fierce, determined voice saying over and over, we stay together. We don't get separated. I can take care of her. And somehow, miraculously, we were placed with the Hendersons. Margaret and Walter Henderson were in their 50s, Black Jamaican immigrants who'd been fostering children for 15 years. They had a small house in Scarborough, not much money, but enormous hearts. They took us in. Loved us. Raised us. We stayed with them until Rebecca aged out of the system at 18. By then, I was 14. The Hendersons wanted to keep me, but Rebecca wouldn't have it. I promised Mom and Dad I'd take care of her, she told them. I promised Jazz she'd never be alone. So when I turn 18, we're getting our own place. Together. And that's what happened. Rebecca got a job at the bank. Rented a small 2-bedroom apartment in Scarborough. Worked every hour she could to make sure I stayed in school, had nice clothes, had opportunities. She never went to university, though she was smart enough. Never traveled, though she dreamed of it. Never seemed to date seriously, though she was beautiful. She just worked and worked and worked to give me the life our parents would have wanted me to have. Everything I am, I owe to Rebecca. Which makes what I did to her so much worse. 3 months ago, Rebecca called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Jazz, I need your help this weekend. Her voice sounded strained. Rebecca had just been diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's at 52, a devastating blow that had forced her into early retirement from her bank manager position. What's up? I asked, taking a break from my shift at Scarborough Health Network. I'm sorting through the basement. With the Parkinson's, I can't do the heavy lifting anymore. And there's so much stuff down there I've been meaning to go through for years. Can you come Saturday? Of course, I said. Are you okay? You sound stressed. Just tired, she said. And maybe it's time to face some old memories. Time to let go of things I've been holding on to for too long. I should have heard the warning in her voice. The finality. But I didn't. Saturday morning, I drove to Rebecca's small bungalow in Scarborough. She'd bought it 10 years ago after decades of saving, a modest 2-bedroom that was entirely hers. The basement was packed with boxes. Decades of accumulated life. Most of this is junk, Rebecca said, already trembling slightly from the Parkinson's. But there are some boxes marked important that I need you to go through. I can't do it myself. There were 5 boxes marked important, do not open. The first one had legal documents. Birth certificates, ours and our parents'. Death certificates for Mom and Dad. Foster care paperwork. Nothing I hadn't seen before. The second box had photos. Beautiful photos of our parents when they were young and in love. Photos of me as a baby. Photos of Rebecca holding me in the hospital the day I was born. The third box was where everything changed. At the bottom, underneath old report cards and school projects, I found a marriage certificate. Rebecca Marie Henry married to David Mitchell Clark. June 15, 1998. Toronto, Ontario. I stared at it for a full minute, not understanding. That would have made Rebecca 26 years old. I would have been 22, in my last year of nursing school. Rebecca had never been married. Had never even mentioned a David Clark. Had always told everyone she'd simply never found the right person, was married to her work, preferred being independent. Rebecca? I called up the stairs. Can you come down here? The silence that followed was too long. When Rebecca finally appeared at the top of the basement stairs, she was gripping the railing so hard her knuckles were white. And it wasn't just the Parkinson's tremor. What did you find? Her voice was barely a whisper. I held up the marriage certificate. Who is David Clark? And why didn't you ever tell me you were married? Rebecca's face went completely white. She actually swayed on her feet. Put it back, she said. Please, Jazz. Just put it back and forget you saw it. But I was already digging deeper in the box. Already finding more documents. A divorce decree dated December 2000. 2 years after the marriage. Photos of Rebecca with a handsome black man, both of them young and radiant. Rebecca in a simple white dress. David in a suit. A small wedding with maybe 15 people. And then I found the letter. Dated May 1998. 1 month before the wedding. Rebecca. I know you don't want to do this. I know you're sacrificing your own happiness for your sister. But I want you to know that I understand why, and I love you even more for it. What happened to Jasmine wasn't your fault. You were 14 years old. You couldn't have stopped it. But I understand why you feel responsible for keeping her safe now. If marrying me and taking my name is what keeps her protected, then I'm honored to be part of that protection. I love you. And I'll wait as long as it takes. David. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the letter. Rebecca, what is this? What does he mean, what happened to Jasmine? What needed to be kept safe? Stop. Rebecca was crying now, actually crying. Please stop reading. Please just stop. But I couldn't stop. I tore through the rest of the box. More letters from David. Divorce papers that listed irreconcilable differences but included a handwritten note from Rebecca. I'm so sorry. I can't be married and be her guardian at the same time. The risk is too great. And then, at the very bottom, I found a police report dated July 1994. Sexual assault. Victim, Jasmine Henry, age 18. Perpetrator, Walter Henderson, age 64. Foster father Walter Henderson. The man who'd raised us. Who I'd called Uncle Walter for 14 years. I don't remember dropping the report. Don't remember the sound I made. Don't remember Rebecca rushing down the stairs despite the Parkinson's, grabbing me, holding me while I screamed. I just remember the world tilting. Everything I thought I knew about my childhood shattering like glass. I couldn't speak for almost an hour. Rebecca held me on the basement floor while I shook and cried and tried to process what I'd just learned. Finally, when I could form words, I don't remember. I don't remember any of it. I know, Rebecca said softly. You blocked it out. The trauma was so severe that your brain just erased it. The therapist said it was a protective mechanism. What therapist? When, I couldn't finish the sentence. Rebecca took a shaky breath. July 1994. You'd just turned 18. You'd graduated high school and were about to start nursing school. I was 22, still living in that apartment, working at the bank. We weren't living with the Hendersons anymore, I said, trying to understand. No. But you still visited them. Still called them Aunt Margaret and Uncle Walter. Still thought of their house as a second home. Rebecca's voice was hollow. Margaret was at church that Sunday. You went over to borrow some books for school. Walter was there alone. I felt like I was going to vomit. He assaulted you in their living room, Rebecca continued, her voice mechanical, like she'd told this story so many times it had lost its emotional weight. You came to my apartment 3 hours later. You were in shock. Could barely speak. Your clothes were torn. You were bleeding. What did you do? I took you to the hospital. They did a rape kit. Called the police. You gave a statement, but you were so traumatized you couldn't remember details. Just that it was Walter. That he'd hurt you. And then what happened? Rebecca's face hardened. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Walter was a respected foster parent. Had a spotless record. 15 years of fostering children with no complaints. Margaret stood by him, said you must have been confused, that Walter would never do such a thing. But the rape kit proved sexual activity had occurred. But Walter claimed you'd come on to him. That you'd been flirting with him for years. That it was consensual. Rebecca's voice shook with old rage. The Crown Attorney didn't think there was enough evidence to prosecute. Said it was he said she said. That your memory gaps would make you a poor witness. So he got away with it. He got away with it, Rebecca confirmed. And you had a complete psychological break. Spent 2 weeks in a psychiatric facility. When you came out, you had no memory of the assault. The doctors said it was traumatic amnesia. That your brain had protected you by erasing the whole event. I stared at her. And you never told me. How could I? Rebecca asked, tears streaming down her face. How could I tell you that the man who raised you, who you loved and trusted, had violated you? That you'd tried to get justice and failed? That he was still out there, free, still fostering children? So you just let me forget. I let you live, Rebecca said fiercely. I let you finish nursing school. Let you build a career. Let you have relationships and friendships and a life that wasn't defined by trauma. Yes, I let you forget. Because remembering would have destroyed you. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I asked the question that had been building, what does this have to do with David Clark? With you getting married? Rebecca closed her eyes. After the assault, after the case was dropped, I became your legal guardian. You were 18 but still vulnerable. Still in school. Still financially dependent on me. And I was terrified. Of what? Of Walter. Of what he might do if he thought he could get away with hurting you again. Of the fact that he knew where we lived, where you worked, where you went to school. Rebecca's hands were shaking badly now. So I talked to a lawyer. Asked what I could do to protect you. And she told me something that gave me nightmares. What? That as your legal guardian, if anything happened to me, custody of you would potentially revert to the foster care system. And the Hendersons, as your most recent foster parents, would likely be given consideration if they petitioned for custody. The horror of that sank in slowly. So if you died, or were incapacitated, or couldn't care for me anymore, I might end up back with Walter, I whispered. Exactly, Rebecca said. And I couldn't let that happen. Couldn't risk it. So I did the only thing I could think of. You got married. I got married. Because a spouse has legal rights that a sister doesn't. Because if I was married, David would become your next guardian if something happened to me, not the foster system. Because it was the only way to create a legal barrier between you and Walter Henderson. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You married someone just to protect me? I married someone I loved, Rebecca corrected gently. David and I had been dating for 2 years. We were happy. But I wouldn't have married him so young if not for needing to protect you. And more importantly. She paused. I had to divorce him 2 years later. Why? Because when you turned 21, you were legally an adult. No longer needed a guardian. The legal protection wasn't necessary anymore. And I realized that being married while being your primary caretaker, while managing your trauma recovery, while trying to hide the truth from you, it was too complicated. Too risky. What if David accidentally mentioned something? What if he pushed me to tell you the truth? What if his family asked questions I couldn't answer? So you divorced a man you loved to keep protecting me, I said numbly. I chose you, Rebecca said simply. I've always chosen you. From the moment Mom and Dad died and I promised I'd keep you safe, everything I've done has been about protecting you. The marriage. The divorce. The decades of silence. All of it. I should have stopped there. Should have thanked her for her sacrifice. Should have honored her choice to keep this devastating truth from me. But I couldn't let it go. Walter Henderson, I said. Is he still alive? Rebecca's face went pale. Jazz, don't. Is he still alive? Is he still fostering children? No, she said quietly. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. He's gone. And Margaret? Died 3 years ago. They're both gone, Jazz. It's over. But it wasn't over. Not for me. Because now I knew. Now I understood that somewhere in my blocked memory was a trauma I'd never processed. A violation I'd never gotten justice for. A monster who'd gotten away with it. And I couldn't live with that. I became obsessed. For the next 3 weeks, I dug into everything. Filed Freedom of Information requests for the police report. Tracked down the Crown attorney who'd declined to prosecute. Found the therapist who'd treated me in 1994. Dr. Patricia Williams was 71 now, retired, but she remembered my case. I advised Rebecca not to tell you, she said when we met for coffee. Your dissociative amnesia was a protective mechanism. Forcing you to remember could have caused more harm than healing. But don't I have a right to know my own history? I demanded. You have a right to heal, Dr. Williams corrected. And sometimes healing means not excavating every painful memory. Sometimes it means accepting that your brain is protecting you and respecting that protection. But I couldn't accept it. Couldn't respect it. I wanted justice. Wanted acknowledgement. Wanted the world to know that Walter Henderson was a predator. Even if he was dead. Even if justice was impossible. Even if telling the truth would hurt the one person who'd sacrificed everything to protect me. The family dinner was Rebecca's idea. She wanted to celebrate her 50th birthday in October, even though she'd turned 52 in November. Better late than never, she joked. The Parkinson's was progressing faster than expected, and she wanted one last gathering with the people who mattered. 28 people came. Some of Rebecca's old co-workers. A few neighbors. Some family friends from church. People who'd known us for decades. Margaret and Walter Henderson's daughter, Christine, was there. She'd reached out to Rebecca years ago, wanting to rebuild the relationship after her parents' deaths. Rebecca had reluctantly agreed, not wanting to create drama. Christine didn't know what her father had done. No one did except Rebecca, me, and the therapist. We were halfway through dinner when I stood up. I didn't plan it. Didn't prepare a speech. It just erupted out of me like poison I'd been holding in for too long. I need to say something, I announced. The room went quiet. Rebecca's face went white. Jazz, don't. 28 years ago, I said, I was sexually assaulted by Walter Henderson. Our foster father. The man everyone in this room remembers as kind and generous and good. Gasps. Christine dropped her fork. The assault was violent. Traumatic. It caused such severe psychological damage that I blocked out the entire memory. And when I tried to report it, when I went to the police, the case was dropped because there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute. Jasmine, sit down, Rebecca said, her voice shaking. Please sit down. But I kept going. For 28 years, I didn't remember. Lived my whole adult life not knowing that a man I trusted had violated me. And the reason I didn't know is because my sister decided I was better off not remembering. Decided she had the right to keep this secret from me. Decided my own trauma wasn't mine to know. That's not fair, Rebecca said, tears streaming down her face. I was protecting you. You were controlling me. I shouted. You made decisions about my life, my body, my memories without my consent. You kept me in the dark about my own assault. You let me have relationships with the Henderson family without knowing what Walter did to me. You erased my own history because you decided I couldn't handle it. Christine stood up, her face pale. My father would never. Your father was a rapist, I said flatly. And everyone in this room who knew him and loved him needs to know that. Needs to know that the man they're remembering fondly destroyed a teenage girl and got away with it. The room erupted. People shouting. Christine crying. Rebecca standing frozen, her Parkinson's tremor so severe her whole body was shaking. And then Rebecca said something that made everyone go silent. Walter Henderson didn't assault you. I stared at her. What? Walter didn't assault you, Rebecca repeated, her voice hollow. I did. The world stopped. Not sexually, she continued quickly, seeing my horror. But I assaulted your memory. Your autonomy. Your right to know your own truth. Because you're right, Jazz. I did control you. I did make decisions about your life without your permission. I did erase your trauma because I couldn't handle the guilt. What guilt? I whispered. Rebecca's face crumpled. The guilt of knowing that the assault happened because I encouraged you to stay close to the Hendersons. Because I wanted us to maintain that connection, to have that stability. Because I dropped you off at their house that day knowing Margaret wouldn't be home, knowing you'd be alone with Walter, and not thinking for 1 second that he might be dangerous. Rebecca, that's not your fault. It is my fault, she screamed. I was your guardian. Your protector. And I failed. And when you were assaulted, when you were broken and traumatized, instead of helping you process it, instead of giving you agency, I made it about me. About my guilt. About my need to fix you by making you forget. She looked around the room at all the shocked faces. I convinced the therapist that triggering your memories would be harmful. I told the police you were too fragile to testify. I made every decision about your recovery without consulting you because I couldn't face the fact that I'd failed to protect you. And the marriage? I asked. David Clark? Was another way to control the narrative, Rebecca admitted. Another way to convince myself I was protecting you when really, I was just managing my own guilt. I married him to create a legal barrier, yes. But I also married him because having a husband made me look stable and responsible. Made social services trust that you were in good hands. Made everyone think I had it all together when inside, I was drowning in the guilt of having failed you. She turned to Christine, who was sobbing. Your father did assault my sister. That part is true. But I'm the one who made it worse. I'm the one who took away her agency to deal with it in her own way. I'm the one who spent 28 years lying to her about her own life. Rebecca looked back at me. So you want to expose secrets? Want to tell everyone the truth? Then tell them that. Tell them that I'm not the hero sister who sacrificed everything. I'm the guilty sister who controlled everything because I couldn't live with my own shame. The room was completely silent. And then Rebecca walked out. Drove away in her car despite the Parkinsons making it dangerous. And no one has seen her since. That was December 2nd, 2024. 3 months ago. Rebecca's car was found 2 days later, parked at a trailhead in Algonquin Park. Her phone was inside, battery dead. Her purse. Her medications. Search and rescue went out. Searched for 5 days. Found no trace of her. The prevailing theory is that she walked into the forest and didn't come back. That the combination of Parkinson's, depression, and the shame of what she'd revealed at dinner pushed her to end her life. But they never found a body. The police eventually classified it as a presumed suicide. Closed the case. I don't believe she's dead. Can't believe it. Won't believe it. But I also know that if she's alive, she doesn't want to be found. That what I did at that dinner, exposing her, forcing her to admit her guilt publicly, making her face all those people, it was the final betrayal. I tried to expose a secret that needed exposing. And I destroyed the person who'd spent her entire life trying to protect me. The letter came 3 weeks ago. No return address. Postmarked from Thunder Bay. Jazz. I'm alive. That's probably the first thing you need to know. I'm not going to tell you where I am. I'm not going to tell you how I'm surviving with advanced Parkinson's and no medication. I'm not going to give you the closure of knowing I'm safe. Because you took away my closure. My peace. My carefully constructed narrative that I was the good sister who saved you. You were right about everything. I did control you. I did take away your agency. I did make decisions about your trauma without your permission. But here's what you didn't understand. I did it because the alternative was watching you destroy yourself. When you were assaulted, Jazz, you didn't just block out the memory. You tried to kill yourself. 3 times in 2 months. And the only thing that kept you alive was not remembering what happened. So yes, I chose to let you forget. I chose to protect you from a memory that was literally killing you. I chose to take on the burden of knowing so you didn't have to. Was it control? Yes. Was it a violation of your autonomy? Absolutely. But it kept you alive. And you repaid that by exposing me in front of everyone I cared about. By making me admit publicly that I'd failed you. By forcing me to face the guilt I'd been managing for 28 years. So now we're even. You got your truth. Your justice. Your moment of moral righteousness. And I got to lose everything. My home. My health care. My support system. My dignity. I hope it was worth it. I'm not writing this to make you feel guilty. I'm writing this so you understand that secrets aren't always lies. Sometimes they're kindness. Sometimes they're the only thing keeping someone alive. You wanted to know your truth. Now you do. You were assaulted. You were traumatized. You almost died. And your sister spent 28 years carrying that weight so you didn't have to. That's your truth. Live with it. Don't look for me. I'm done being found. Rebecca. I read that letter 67 times before I finally understood what I'd done. Rebecca hadn't been controlling me. She'd been carrying me. For 28 years, she'd held the weight of my trauma so I could live a normal life. So I could become a nurse. So I could have relationships. So I could exist without the crushing knowledge that I'd been violated and had gotten no justice. And I'd called that control. Called it a violation. Called it wrong. Because I'd wanted agency more than I'd wanted protection. Wanted truth more than I wanted peace. Wanted to expose her failure more than I wanted to honor her sacrifice. I went to Dr. Williams again. Rebecca's letter said I tried to kill myself, I said. 3 times. Is that true? Dr. Williams was quiet for a long moment. Then, yes. In the 2 months after the assault, you made 3 serious attempts. The trauma wasn't just psychological, it was existential. You couldn't reconcile the Walter you knew with the Walter who'd hurt you. Couldn't live in a world where that was possible. And the amnesia? Saved your life, she said simply. Your brain chose forgetting over death. And Rebecca supported that choice. Aggressively protected it. Refused to let anyone try to force your memories back. She was protecting me, I whispered. She was loving you, Dr. Williams corrected. In the most profound way possible. She carried your trauma so you didn't have to die from it. The wedding ring arrived yesterday. Just the simple gold band in a padded envelope. No note. But I understood the message. Rebecca had given up her marriage to protect me. Had divorced a man she loved to keep my secret safe. Had sacrificed her own happiness for my stability. And I'd repaid that by exposing her in the cruelest possible way. It's been 3 months since Rebecca disappeared. I don't know if she's alive or dead. Don't know if she's suffering or finally at peace. Don't know if she'll ever come back. What I do know is this. I was wrong. Not about deserving to know my own history. Not about having a right to my own memories. But about how I handled that knowledge. I weaponized my pain. Turned it into a cudgel I used to beat my sister with. Exposed her not because it would help me heal, but because I was angry that she'd made choices for me. Even when those choices kept me alive. I carry Rebecca's wedding ring with me everywhere now. Touch it when the guilt becomes unbearable. When I want to justify what I did. When I want to tell myself I was right to expose her. The ring reminds me that love isn't always about respecting autonomy. Sometimes it's about carrying weight someone else can't bear. Sometimes it's about making impossible choices to keep someone alive. Rebecca loved me enough to divorce the man she loved. Loved me enough to carry my trauma for 28 years. Loved me enough to let me hate her for protecting me. And I loved myself more than I loved her. Loved my right to know more than her right to peace. Loved my agency more than her sacrifice. If you're watching this, I need you to understand something. Before you expose someone's secrets, before you demand truth at all costs, before you insist on your right to know, ask yourself this. What if that secret is the only thing keeping someone alive? What if that lie is actually love in disguise? What if the person who's controlling you is actually the only thing standing between you and death? I didn't ask those questions. And now my sister is gone. And I have to live every day knowing that the person who saved my life is suffering somewhere because I couldn't see her protection for what it was. My name is Jasmine Henry. I'm 48 years old. And I wish to God I had stayed silent. If this story broke your heart, if you've ever been protected by someone's sacrifice and didn't realize it until too late, if you've ever confused love with control, subscribe to this channel right now. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've been the Jasmine or the Rebecca in your own family. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm right. Just tell me something so I know I'm not alone. Because women like my sister, women who sacrifice everything, who carry unbearable weight, who make impossible choices to keep their loved ones alive, they deserve to be honored. Not exposed. Not judged. Honored. Don't let Rebecca's disappearance be meaningless. Don't let her sacrifice go unacknowledged. Hit subscribe. Leave a comment. Share this with someone who needs to understand that sometimes, the greatest love looks like control. That sometimes, secrets are kindness. That sometimes, the person who's managing you is actually saving your life. Thank you for bearing witness to my deepest regret. And Rebecca, if you're somehow watching this, I finally understand. I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner. I'm sorry I confused your love with control. I'm sorry I exposed you when you'd spent your whole life protecting me. Come home. Please. Or don't. Either way, I finally understand what you gave up for me. And I'm so sorry it took losing you to see it.